My name is Emily, and for as long as I can remember, my life has been shaped by a family who only ever cared about themselves. I used to think family was supposed to be your safe place. The people who loved you no matter what. The ones who would never turn their back on you when life got hard. That's what I believed growing up, what I told myself late at night when the loneliness crept in. But what I was about to find out is that sometimes the people you trust the most can cut the deepest wounds. And sometimes you don't truly see their true colors until you're at your most vulnerable. It all started with something I thought was simple. I needed surgery, nothing cosmetic, nothing that could be brushed off as a whim. This was a real, serious procedure. One that scared me to my very core. The kind of thing where, in the days leading up to it, you lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of fear pressing down on your chest. I remember sitting on my bed, phone in hand, debating how to even tell them. My family's group chat wasn't exactly the warmest place. It was more like a place where everyone tried to one-up each other with little victories, a stage for my siblings to brag about promotions, vacations, new cars, or whose kid made the honor roll. Still, I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe if I opened up and shared something vulnerable, they'd respond with love. Maybe they'd finally rally around me. For once, put aside the petty competition and just be there. I typed out the message slowly, my fingers trembling over the screen. Hey everyone, I wanted to let you know I'm going in for surgery next week. It's a little scary, and I'd really appreciate your prayers and support. I stared at those words, my heart pounding as if I'd just confessed a secret. I hit send, expecting maybe a flood of replies, maybe even a phone call. At least something. But the seconds turned into minutes. The minutes stretched into an hour. And nothing. No response. Not a single word. At first, I told myself they were probably busy. Maybe they hadn't seen the message. But I watched as those little red receipts popped up one by one. My sister, my brother, even my parents, every single one of them had opened it. And still, silence. It was like a punch in the stomach. I sat there staring at my phone, hoping, waiting for even just a heart emoji. You'll be okay. Something to show me that I wasn't invisible. But my family, my own blood, chose to ignore me. By the time I put my phone down, my hands were shaking. I felt this cold realization sink into me. I wasn't a priority to them. I never had been. My whole life, I had been the one to show up, to listen, to cheer them on when they needed it. When my sister went through her divorce, I stayed up for nights listening to her cry. When my brother lost his job, I helped him polish his resume and even slipped him some money to get by. And when my parents fought, I played the role of mediator, the glue that tried desperately to hold the family together. But when it was my turn, when I needed something, I got nothing. I remember crying that night, alone in my room, my pillow soaking wet with tears. It wasn't just about the surgery anymore. It was about years and years of being overlooked, brushed aside, and treated like my pain didn't matter. The next day, I woke up and checked the chat again. Still nothing. Instead, my sister had sent a photo of the new shoes she bought. My brother chimed in with a video of his kids at a soccer game. And my parents, well, they just liked those posts, as if my message had never even been there. That was when something inside me broke. I realized I had been clinging to this idea of family, this fantasy that if I gave enough, if I loved enough, eventually they would love me back. But now I could see the truth. I was just convenient for them. A shoulder when they needed to cry, a wallet when they needed money, an audience when they wanted applause. But me, my needs, my fears, my life, those didn't matter. And in that moment, something else lit inside me too. Anger, pure, unshakable anger. Because if they could so easily ignore me when I was at my lowest, then maybe it was time for me to stop being the quiet, forgiving one. Maybe it was time to show them what it felt like to be invisible. to expose the ugly truth behind the perfect family mask they all like to parade in public. I didn't know it yet, but that night, the night my own family ignored my cry for help, was the night I started planning my revenge. The morning of my surgery came faster than I expected. I barely slept the night before, tossing and turning, my mind looping through every possible outcome. My body felt heavy, but my chest was light with dread, almost hollow. I had packed my bag with the essentials: slippers, a robe, my phone charger, and a small notebook where I thought I might write my feelings down during recovery. I imagined having messages from family to scroll through, encouragement to cling to when I got scared. But when I opened the family chat one last time before heading to the hospital, there was still nothing, just more chatter about trivial things. My sister was debating which curtains to buy for her living room. My brother was making jokes about the neighbor's barking dog. My parents were chiming in as if I hadn't poured my heart out in that very same thread. I wanted to scream at them through the screen, shake my phone until the truth spilled out. Don't you see me? Don't you care that I'm terrified? But I didn't. Instead, I slipped the phone into my bag and quietly walked out the door. At the hospital, the sterile smell hit me like a wall. Bright white walls, nurses bustling around with clipboards, the sharp sting of antiseptic in the air. I checked in at the front desk and was given a plastic bracelet with my name on it. That little band felt like it held my entire identity in one cheap strip of plastic. My existence reduced to a patient number and a last name. I kept glancing at the entrance, half expecting someone from my family to walk through those sliding doors at the last minute. Maybe they'd surprise me, tell me they had been planning to come all along, that they wouldn't let me face this alone. But nobody came. As I sat in the pre-op room, a nurse gently asked me who would be waiting for me when the surgery was over. I froze. For a second, shame burned in my chest like acid. I didn't want to admit the truth, but the words slipped out anyway. No one. I'll be recovering alone. The nurse's eyes softened, and she gave me a small pitying smile. Well, she said gently, then we'll take extra good care of you. Her kindness nearly undid me. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. The surgery itself was a blur. I remember the mask being placed over my face, the sharp scent of anesthesia filling my lungs, and then nothing, just darkness. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was the weight of emptiness. My body ached, but what hurt more was the silence. There was no familiar voice telling me it was over, no warm hand squeezing mine, assuring me I wasn't alone. Instead, I was wheeled into a recovery room, the beeping of machines filling the silence, where laughter or comforting words should have been. I turned my head toward the chair beside my bed, and it was empty. The emptiness screamed louder than any sound. Hours passed. Nurses checked in, asking about my pain level, adjusting my IV, making sure I had water. But my phone? It stayed silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. I scrolled through the family group chat again. My sister had sent a selfie at brunch with her friends. My brother had shared a photo of his new car. My parents had liked the posts, throwing digital confetti into the void of their carefully curated lives. Not a single acknowledgement of where I was or what I was going through. That night, lying in that hospital bed, I realized something that made my blood run cold. If I had died on that operating table, none of them would have known until days later, maybe even weeks. And if they did find out, it would probably be through some casual phone call, or worse, a social media post. The thought clawed at my insides until I couldn't breathe. I survived, but something inside me didn't. The following days of recovery were slow and painful. I struggled to move without wincing, every step a reminder of how fragile my body was. I cooked simple meals for myself, forcing soup down when I had no appetite. I cleaned my bandages, wincing as I peeled back tape. my hands trembling with every movement. I looked around my empty apartment and thought about how easily a family could have filled this silence. If only they cared enough to show up, but they didn't. What they did do was continue, living their lives as though mine didn't exist. I saw the notifications piling in the group chat. My sister hosted a dinner party and posted all about it. My brother boasted about getting a bonus at work. My parents raved about a trip they were planning. And through it all, I was invisible. Not even a "how are you" slipped through. At first I cried every day. The tears came so easily, like my body was trying to flush out the betrayal through sheer force. But after a while, the tears dried up. My sadness hardened into something else, something sharper. I began replaying every moment of my childhood, every memory where I had been made to feel small or insignificant. I remembered how my sister would mock me for my dreams, telling me I wasn't smart enough, not pretty enough, not strong enough. I remembered how my brother would laugh when I failed, always eager to point out my flaws, but never once celebrating my successes. I remembered how my parents would compare me to them, always highlighting how I fell short. It wasn't just about the surgery. It was about a lifetime of being the afterthought, the background character in their perfect family play. One evening, as I sat staring at my healing scar in the mirror, I whispered to myself, "Enough." That word echoed in my head like a vow. Enough of being overlooked. Enough of being ignored. Enough of giving without ever receiving. If they could betray me when I needed them most, then I would no longer give them the power to hurt me. But it wasn't enough just to walk away quietly. No, that would be too easy for them. They had spent years building this perfect facade. The successful children, the doting parents, the family everyone envied. If I simply faded into the background, they would continue on as if nothing had happened. No, they needed to feel what I felt. They needed to be exposed for what they truly were. Selfish, heartless, hollow. And for the first time in my life, I started to think about revenge. Not the kind you see in movies with dramatic fights or screaming confrontations. No, my revenge would be quieter, sharper. A mirror held up to their faces so the world could see the truth. I began writing in my notebook. Every memory, every slight, every betrayal. I filled page after page with their words, their actions. The way they had ignored me, the way they had dismissed me. It was a chronicle of pain, a testament to everything they had tried to bury under their fake smiles. And as I wrote, I felt a strange sense of power returning to me. My family had taken so much, but they couldn't take my voice. And my voice was going to be the very thing that undid them. Recovery dragged on longer than I wanted. Every morning I woke up with stiffness in my body, but what ached more than anything was the gnawing emptiness in my chest. I learned to move slowly, to stretch carefully, to accept the limitations that surgery had left me with. But at the same time, I felt myself growing stronger in ways I hadn't expected. Because while my body healed, my perspective sharpened. I watched my family from a distance, through the constant ping of notifications in the group chat. They didn't just ignore me. They flaunted their lives in a way that almost felt deliberate, like they were rubbing my invisibility in my face. My sister, Claire, sent endless photos of herself in designer clothes, always with a smile that screamed, "Look at me. Look at my perfect life." My brother, Daniel, kept boasting about his career, as though every step up the corporate ladder made him a god among mortals. And my parents, oh my parents, they acted like proud monarchs, presiding over their successful children, basking in borrowed glory. It would have been laughable if it didn't cut so deep, because behind every shiny picture, every bragging story, I knew the truth. Claire's credit cards were drowning in debt. Daniel's bonus had come at the cost of stabbing a coworker in the back. My parents' marriage had been hanging by a thread for years, full of screaming matches and silent treatments they thought no one else noticed. I knew it all, and for the first time, instead of burying those truths to protect them, I felt a fire urging me to drag it all into the light. I started small, subtle things. When Claire posted a photo of her new handbag in the chat, gushing about how she treated herself after a long week, I replied with one word: debt. I didn't elaborate, didn't explain, just dropped the word like a stone into still water. The chat went silent for a moment before Claire brushed it off with a forced laugh. Oh, Emily, always joking. But I saw it. I saw the tiny crack in her perfect mask. When Daniel bragged about landing a big project at work, I asked, was that before or after you threw your teammate under the bus? Another silence. Another awkward deflection. My parents pretended not to notice, but I knew they did, because slowly the chat grew quieter when I was active. They were nervous. They were afraid, and I liked it, but I wasn't done. Not even close. One evening, while I sat at my desk flipping through my notebook of betrayals, I had an idea. If my family wanted to perform their perfect lives for the world, then maybe the world deserved to see the truth. I began writing a story, not a journal entry, not a rant, a story about a family who pretended to be perfect while hiding rot beneath their shiny exterior. I didn't name names, but anyone who knew us would see through it. The selfish daughter with her mounting debt, the arrogant son who thrived on sabotage, the parents who ignored their child when she needed them most. I poured my heart into every sentence, every paragraph. My pain became ink, and that ink became a weapon. Then I published it. I didn't put it in the family chat. No, that would have been too easy. I shared it online, where it could spread, where it could linger like a shadow over their reputations. I made sure it was anonymous, but detailed enough that the people who mattered, family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, would connect the dots. And they did. It started with whispers. A coworker asking Daniel if the story was about him. A friend of Claire's teasing her about the mystery shopaholic. My parents getting odd looks at their social events. The group chat lit up with panic. Claire demanded to know if I had seen the story. Daniel ranted about jealous people making things up. My parents insisted we should all ignore it, that giving it attention would only make it worse. I stayed silent, watching, waiting. And the silence was delicious. For once, I wasn't the one being ignored. For once, they were the ones squirming, scrambling, doubting each other. My absence from the conversation spoke louder than any accusation. But my revenge wasn't just about exposing their secrets. It was about reclaiming myself. I stopped responding to their empty chatter. I stopped showing up for them. When Claire called me late one night, crying about her mounting bills, I let the call ring. When Daniel asked me to proofread his resume for another promotion, I ignored the message. When my parents begged me to come to a family dinner, I politely declined. And for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. They had taken so much from me, but now they were feeling the sting of my absence. My silence was louder than all the years of sacrifices I had made for them. Still, I knew the final act of my revenge was yet to come. Something big, something unforgettable. Because if my family had taught me anything, it was that appearances were everything. So what better way to end this than to shatter their perfect image in front of everyone they wanted to impress? I began to plan. There was an upcoming family event, my parents' anniversary party. They had been talking about it for months, hyping it up as the grand celebration of their lasting love and their beautiful family. Everyone important would be there. Friends, relatives, colleagues. It was the perfect stage, and I was going to use it. I didn't know exactly how just yet, but as I closed my notebook and stared at the dates circled on my calendar, I felt a calm determination settle into my bones. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about truth, about finally holding them accountable for years of cruelty and neglect. And when the curtain fell on that anniversary night, the world would see my family for what they truly were. The weeks leading up to my parents' anniversary party were a blur of planning. Not theirs, but mine. They sent out invitations to relatives, neighbors, even old colleagues. The way they talked about it, you'd think it was the wedding of the century, not a simple anniversary. My mother gushed in the group chat about the catering, the decor, the speeches. My father bragged about the guest list, like he was hosting royalty. Every message they sent only confirmed what I already knew. The night wasn't about celebrating their marriage. It was about appearances, about feeding their hunger for admiration, and that made it the perfect battlefield. I spent those weeks not just healing physically, but sharpening emotionally. I rehearsed what I might say, how I might say it. I played out different scenarios in my head. Whether I'd make a scene, whether I'd stay calm, whether I'd let them unravel on their own. The one thing I knew for certain was that I would not leave that party as the quiet, invisible daughter they had always dismissed. The night arrived, and with it came a storm of nerves in my stomach. I dressed carefully, not in anything extravagant, but in something that made me feel strong. A simple black dress, understated yet striking, paired with a necklace I had bought for myself after surgery as a symbol of survival. Tonight wasn't about them. It was about me. When I walked into the venue, a rented banquet hall dripping with fairy lights and white tablecloths, I was immediately struck by how staged everything felt. Laughter too loud, smiles too wide, compliments exchanged like currency. My parents floated through the crowd, soaking up praise, basking in the glow of their carefully curated image. I kept to the edges at first, watching. My sister was already posing for photos, angling herself toward the best lighting. My brother was cornering a group of colleagues, no doubt inflating his achievements. It was a performance, every bit of it, and I was the only one who knew the script was a lie. Dinner came and went. Toasts were made. My parents clinked glasses, thanking everyone for being part of their beautiful family's journey. And that was when it happened. The moment I had been waiting for. My father tapped his glass and announced, "We'd like our children to come up and say a few words. Family is everything after all." The irony almost made me laugh. Claire went first, gushing about how she learned strength and style from our mother. Daniel followed, boasting about how our father had taught him ambition. The guests applauded politely, the perfect image of a perfect family. Then it was my turn. I stood, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. All eyes turned to me, and for once, I didn't shrink under the weight of their gaze. I walked to the front of the room, took the microphone, and let the silence settle. "My name is Emily," I began, my tone calm but firm, "and I suppose I'm here to talk about family." I paused, scanning the room. My parents smiled at me expectantly, but I saw the flicker of unease in their eyes. They knew me well enough to sense the storm brewing. "I had surgery a few months ago," I continued, my voice tightening. A murmur rippled through the room. I was terrified. I reached out to my family, told them I needed support. Do you know what I got in return? I held up my phone, scrolled to the group chat, and projected the silence onto the giant screen behind me. Message after message of me asking for prayers, followed by photos of shoes, cars, vacations. Not a single acknowledgement of my fear. The room went quiet, dead quiet. "That," I said, my voice cutting through the silence, "is what family meant to them. My pain, ignored. My fear, invisible. My life, less important than a shopping spree or a work bonus." Gasps rose from the crowd. I saw Claire pale, Daniel's jaw tighten, my parents shifting uncomfortably. But it's not just about the surgery. I pressed on, my anger sharpening into clarity. It's about a lifetime of being overlooked, About a sister who drowned in debt while pretending to be flawless. About a brother who sabotaged others to climb higher. About parents who praised their children for their achievements, but ignored one child's existence, unless it was convenient. I let the words hang in the air, watching as the mask began to crack. Family is supposed to mean love, support, loyalty. But what I've learned is that family can also mean betrayal. And tonight, I refuse to play along with the illusion anymore. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, whispers spreading like wildfire. My parents' perfect night was unraveling before their eyes, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. I lowered the microphone slightly, my voice softening but firm. So tonight I'm done. I will no longer beg for love that should have been freely given. I will no longer sacrifice myself for people who see me as disposable. From this moment on, I choose myself, and I cut ties with anyone who can't see my worth. I set the microphone down, the finality of the gesture echoing louder than any applause. The room buzzed with shock. My sister's face flushed crimson. My brother muttered angrily under his breath. My parents stared at me as though I had just set fire to their empire. But I didn't care. For once, their reactions didn't matter. I turned, walked out of the banquet hall, and felt the cool night air hit my skin like freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten one. I wasn't the invisible one. I was the one who had spoken the truth. And though my family's world had just crumbled, mine was just beginning. That night, I closed the door on them. Not just physically, but emotionally, permanently. The silence that once haunted me now felt like peace. And in that peace, I found something I had been searching for my entire life. Revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about freeing myself. And I had finally done it.